大盛りにしてちょうだい。なんせ2人分の栄養が必要なのよ、私。
There's an interesting scene midway through the movie where Hana, trying to look for Kyoko and Miyuki, stumbles at the crossroads and coughs blood. The soundtrack at once turns sinister, filling the audience with a kind of concern for Hana, because obvious death flags are being raised. But going back a bit and observing the shot carefully, as pointed out by the full Metal Narcissist, one can actually discern a face in the structure of the side of the building, and the design seems so deliberate with two parallel open windows in the mouth. Besides, this is not the only such shot. Several shots imply there to be some Providence watching over the trio. But is it really Providence or just a mere coincidence? Am I looking too much into this? Have I fell victim to pareidolia? But for now, we'll assume that this face here is an intended religious motif, and if such is the case, on close inspection, the movement of the blood seems to be along the pipes, which is perpendicular to the eyes of this face. It seems as if God's face is shedding tears of blood, which is symbolic of tragic characters. Remember that Hana is suggested to be the tragic one here. However, contrary to this notion of divine providence, the scene takes place in the middle of a crossroad. Now, crossroads often feature as the setting for ominous happenings. It's a common place for a deal with the devil. So is this the face of the devil instead of a benevolent God? Perhaps. But then going back to the more secular point, all of this could be interpreted as just me seeing patterns where there are none. Even more so since nothing really tragic happens to Hana, even after them tears of blood. See, this is the thing with this movie. The recurring duality, while being an exercise in semiotics, as put by Joe, is also a one-on-one fight between two interpretations, one secular and one religious. The movie cleverly always leaves room for and balances out the two interpretations, and it imbues this in every fiber of its being. I'd like to describe my first impressions of the movie here and then explain the subsequent ones to show the level of craft that went into this. So the first scene, which is always the most influential in a movie, started off with the nativity play, which I connected to the scene where the trio finds the baby, and well, by intuition, I understood that this baby was special. In the same scene, Dostoevsky was referenced. Now, having read 3 of his works, the reference brought to mind the positive portrayal of Christianity, of poverty-stricken people in Dostoevsky's novels. All of this I connected to the divine nature of the baby and the positive portrayal of the homeless trio, respectively. In the preceding scenes, Gen comments on the grim nature of the world and recommends the name John Doe for the baby. Now, having Seven as one of my favorite movies and John Doe being the chosen one himself, I figured the baby herself must be the chosen one in this movie. After all, the baby's name said by Hana is Kyoko, in which Kyo means pure, and considering that the leitmotif that is adorned the baby every now and then is Beethoven's Ninth Symphony Ode to Joy, itself a Christian musical piece. Oh, and the trio narrowly escapes accidents one after the other. Surely the child must be divine, and the messenger of God indeed, who is facilitating the miracles. But on the flip side of things, on my subsequent rewatches, I discovered new things. That religiosity is trampled upon constantly. By the faces of the audience, no one gives a shit about the nativity play and the sermon, and are only present there for the food. From the 2 main characters, Hana is the believer and Gen is not, which evens things out. Both The Child and a dozen hardcover novels of Dostoevsky are found in a pile of garbage, thus downplaying their role. The name John Doe for male and Jane for female are handy names assigned temporarily to patients or missing people when lacking the real name of the person. And the character of John Doe himself is a morally controversial character at best, with an ambiguous theological underpinning. The baby is named Kyoko, which means the pure one, by Hana herself. And here's where the genius of the craft comes in, because by the fact that it is Hana assigning the name to the baby, it allows for the subsistence of 2 interpretations. Generally, what happens is that an author names his or her character for the story, and this name is inspected and added to the study of the character. But in this case, since the naming of the baby happens inside the story itself, you can make the second interpretation that the author intended Hana to play off as a holy fool, and thus it makes obvious sense that Hana would name her baby that way. And once again, evening things out, Gen doesn't seem too happy about the name, and the name is later downplayed by its association with a couple of ruffians. And something similar happens with the leitmotif. If you listen closely to the ode to joy that plays for the baby, you can actually see that's coming from a radio.
父さん
And is not something edited into the movie as proper background music, thus once again leaving room for two interpretations. It's either a leitmotif used in the movie for divine characters, or it's just something coming out of a radio, making it a coincidence. I mean, look, there's the radio, and there must be one inside the ambulance as well. And of course the radio will be playing Ode to Joy. It's Christmas. What else are they supposed to play? And might I also add the ingenious introduction of the movie, presenting the title of the movie inside the universe of the movie itself, so as to once again muddle the authorial intention and the religious insinuations behind the title, and not let the audience derive only a single interpretation of even the name of the movie. Now you can always say that Tokyo Godfathers isn't the title of the movie, and that it was just a panning shot of signboards and shots of trucks, and that no particular emphasis should be laid on the words Tokyo Godfathers. The signboards containing the names of the artists are realistic when you consider that those artists actually exist inside the movie, the world of Tokyo Godfathers itself, which is confirmed because there are posters of very movies they created. And to normalize the scene where the truck interferes, the movie is filled with shots of vehicles coming in between the camera. The speedy ambulance crash itself is a simple coincidence, and so is this two-wheeler. I mean, it's the end of the year, it's snowing, and so the road will obviously be slippery, thus leading to accidents, especially in the case of fast-moving ambulances. And this slipperiness of the road is emphasized in one of the scenes in particular, where a vehicle rolls over a man. What the story asks of the audience is empathy for the world of Tokyo Godfathers, and an unprejudicial perspective towards it. When I say unprejudicial, I mean whenever you come across a religious trope such as the divine light upon this body, the movie motivates you, however, to also consider at the same time that it might as well be just a street light. And there are several scenes that hint at this play of our ability to make meaningful connections and interpretations. As Joe mentioned, there was the scene with the old man. Then there's the scene where we're left to translate and interpret ourselves the language the lady is speaking in. On a meta level, this movie could actually be seen as an allegory of how faith comes to establish itself in a person. After such a series of blaring improbabilities, the audience is sure to be convinced of some deus ex machina or some god. Our ability to interpret events is put to the test. Being lazy, we naturally tend towards a more Christian interpretation. Yet, to the observant and the harshest cold atheistic eye, this movie could still be interpreted as having secular themes. We humans often have the tendency to romanticize the past, to convince ourselves with easier explanations, such as the argument of, and I think that is the very essence and purpose of this scene, where Gin recollects his past. The movie fools us with its convincing power and the cunning weaving of its narrative into believing in God, while at the same time being secular.
銀さんの隣にいる娘か。だったらとっとと言ってくれ。
おめえにちょっかい出すと後が怖えからよ。
なんで？
おめえ銀さんの箱入り娘だってじゃねえか。
The credits roll in playful fashion, with building stance and devaluing the information present in the ending credits, in keeping with the nature of the movie's opening. But right before that, I believe that the duality is violated as the camera zooms out of the building from the left side. The building's architecture seems to convey a kind of connection between the two sides, a kind of oneness of the two interpretations. Besides, even if that were and were not the case, what then does the left side represent, if not the right side, and right as left?
奇跡だわ。